Hey guys, how's it going? Michael Troy here. I'm so excited today. We have another comic chat. Today I am speaking with Matt Dunford, big comic book industry guy. He works for Upperdeck, the trading card company. You may know him from Love on the Spectrum, his newfound 15 minutes of fame. So
Hmm.
today I'm so excited. I've been friends with Matt for a long time, even though we don't know each other that well. So I'm going to get to know him as you get to know him today, and I'm very excited he's here. So thanks so much for being here, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm just, in the cusp of, making up all these, wonderful trading cards that, I love and working with so many artists. And it's, a wonderful day to day that I get to do. So it's just, and I wouldn't be here if I didn't love this stuff. And, I absolutely do.
I was gonna say, like, the dream in life is to obviously uh make your passion into your career, and it looks like you've done that. So you work for Upper Deck, like probably the biggest trading card company in the country, if not the world, right? And how long have you worked for them?
I've been at here for 3 years now. I started off as the talent relations coordinator, basically just recruiting artists for trading card projects, and that started like a little after, like like a year into COVID, and I think that it's just a wonderful boom of the trading card industry as a whole, and now I'm the senior talent relations coordinator, overseeing things, so more projects, more things, because that's the cool thing when you do your job well, you get to do other people's jobs.
That sounds fun. So, what exactly, I mean, it seems like fairly straightforward in the title of your job, but what exactly do you do as a talent coordinator?
Also, so basically, being a talent relations coordinator means that you are a person who interacts with people. So I get to be the guy that goes out there and just says that, okay, would you like to draw trading cards? And those people are going to be like, who are you, spam bot? Go away. How did you get my email? Leave me alone. I'm not falling for your scam. And then I'll show up to a convention and at their table and say, hi, Matt Dunford again. And you're like, wait, you're real? Yes, I'm actually real. This is a legitimate offer. Would you like to join a trading card project? We're actually doing these things. And so I get to be the guy that goes out and hires artists to do trading card projects, and I get to oversee them and work with them, do the different process, not just of like just like starting off negotiating contracts, and then looking through different artwork on the pencil stage, the inking stage, the coloring stage, and just to make sure that the cards are beautiful and presentable for the adoring public out there that's going to consume them. And it's really a cool, unique thing that we get to do because it's always feeding the beast in one way, shape, or form. When I started collecting comics off in like 1992, it was a good period of time because there was so much overlap between different parties. Say, for example, if you like wanted to get into X-Men, you could do so just by doing the trading cards, the action figures, maybe the arcade game, the cartoon that was on, and and all of these things kind of fed into one another. Maybe you only watch the TV show, which led you into the action figures, but the action figures would be packaged with the trading card, and then of course those trading cards would have the indicators of like key issues and stuff, and so that would get you into comic collecting. So it was like all these things synergizing with one another to help get you into multiple passions. And I think that's why so much of us have grown up into adult collectors that have just become insatiable when it comes to toys, action figures, trading cards, and comics.
No, it's interesting to me because comic books I've always felt is very much like a niche market. And it would seem to me like trading cards would be even more of a niche market kind of offshoot. But it looks like you have a fairly big office there, so you guys have plenty of uh deals. There's like what's the demand or like the market like for trading cards these days?
Uh,
Just
the
out of
market
curiosity.
the market for trading cards is it's bigger than ever. I mean, the best thing and worst thing to happen to the comic industry or collectible industries in general was COVID. The thing is, when everyone was locked away, all of a sudden they get that they get tired of looking at screens. They want to actually start collecting physical media again. And then, when they're getting those extra unemployment checks or the extra COVID money, it's like, oh, I got a little extra to work with. Maybe I can start getting into collecting of sorts. So ultimately, as much as I may not be their biggest fans. It was like Jake Paul and Logan Paul ultimately opening up packs of Pokemon cards and say, "Oh, we got the super old rare thing. Oh, we got this old thing." And me being a Pokemon card guy, I'm like, those aren't rare. Just because they're old doesn't mean they're rare. But it started off this collecting boom. And so, of course, the collecting boom started, with Pokemon, then it kind of like spilled over into like sports cards and like Marvel cards and other things. It lifted up the entire collectible industry. And so basically just like while people were stuck at home, like that COVID COVID just, it drove a collectible boom. Suddenly, I know game stores in town that were like 90% video games and may have been like 10% like, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Magic, and all of a sudden that sales increase flipped to like 90% trading cards and 10% video games instead, for in terms of revenue. So it really boosted things up. But ultimately, when you look at how things are, there's going to be some kind of dip off. But the thing is, enough people have retained on this part where they're still jumping on board. So it's never been a better time to start collecting and, jumping into these things. And it's just great to see so many different aspects of trading cards that we do have, especially because there's so many different varieties. Before, we just, would collect, just like, say, for example, like a 9 card sheet just to assemble these things. Of course, like Ode to Fleer Ultra Spider-Man 1994, my all-time favorite trading card set by the immortal Mark Bagley. And, you know, you can get sketch cards out of these things, like, one of a kind rare art cards. You can still find holofoil cards. You can find autograph collector cards now. There's so many different incentivized things that you can find in some of these, upper deck trading card packets. That's just, really cool to go off of. And it's really fun just to see the artwork come to life and, to be able to work with so many artists and like look at a trading card and be like, hey, I made that happen. Well, I mean, the artist made that happen, but it's like, oh, it's like I kind of set the wheels in motion. But so it's a lot of fun there too.
So I'm just curious, how do you find your talent? Are you working with established names? Do you go for recommendations, or do you just see artists that you like and reach out to them, or how does that all work?
It's a mixed bag of things because typically it's like, cool, I'm gonna get this guy. It's like, oh, I've, in the past I've worked with like, giant names. It's like, geez, I worked with Bill Sienkiewicz at Comicfest back in the day. It's like, cool, can we get Bill Sienkiewicz? He may not be within our budget for these sort of things because some of the typically the thing is if I recognize a particular name that they want to go after, it's gonna be like, oh, okay, cool, let's get Alex Ross. I'm like, yeah, it would be nice to have him on this project, but guy costs a
Exactly.
little pretty penny for the artwork. So um when I look at these things, I'm always on the hunt for new artists and new talent. So like I'll be going to like drink and draw events in local bars in San Diego. I'll be going to like all the conventions up and down Artist Alley, or just like browsing Instagram late at night and just be like, hey, can I get your email to do this? Wait, and they're like, who the hell are you? So it's just so it becomes, an interesting thing. When I first got this job, it was like, okay, cool. I'm going to get all these, big name artists to join us on trading card projects, but like they're really not going to be, they may not be available for it because they may be working on comic deadlines. It may not fit their budget, they sort of thing. So I find myself being the kind of guy who goes and recruits the up and comers now, people that artists that you've never heard of. I'm like, you're good. Why are you not doing this? And it's been really cool over the course of 3 years to be like just to pick someone out of obscurity who's like never really done professional work. They were kind of just doing it for fun online and put them on trading card projects. And suddenly I'm seeing these people doing like action figure packaging art or like, being featured in like Marvel Voices, doing like it's like it's a cool gateway to get them into these bigger things. And I try to say it's like McDonald's. It's I want this to be your best first job.
That I really love to hear that. It's funny because, like I said, I've known you for years, and I've actually thought about reaching out to you to offer because I am an artist too, and I thought I'm on the flip side of it. I thought, oh, he's probably working with people like Bill Sienkiewicz and Alex Ross, and why the hell would he want to hear from someone, unknown person like me? So it's very gratifying to hear that, you're giving artists, up and coming artists, a chance, and there's so many great untapped artists. I feel like the comic book industry can sometimes be like, the movie industry, and you're seeing the same artists getting the work over and over again. And there's so many great artists out there. So it's nice to know that there are avenues for lesser known artists to get, their foot in the door and get some kind of exposure like that.
Yeah,
So
we do always want to have the heavy hitters around, but the heavy hitters
Of
are not
course.
always going to be available for these things. And so we do want to freshen things up just to make sure that new talent is being showcased and is an opportunity for everyone to love new featured creators.
Yeah, I think that's a good approach because I think that especially with art and artists and stuff, there are names and they deserve their names. And it's always good to have a good mix, you know what I mean? Get the names to draw people in and then show them the other great stuff that is out there as well. So would you like, are you more of a gamer or a trading card person or a comic geek, or do you consider all of that like you're representative of all that?
I'm a representative of all of that, but it's just, my sort of journey into geekdom kind of just like it comes and goes in different waves and sorts. So like, I remember the first thing I was ever really hardcore into was Lego Pirates. Those were always my jam. And I just, collected little Lego Pirates and made some sets. And my mom made got a collection for me that actually had a Lego Pirate comic in the back featured in it. And I was like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. They actually have a story. I'm like, Mom, read this to me. I'm not an age where I can read. I'm like, Dad, read this to me. Read this to me. And so it just got to this point over and over where I was just like asking my parents to read me this awesome Lego Pirate comic that they just sat me down, got me hooked on phonics at like age 6 so I could learn how to read my Lego Pirate comic. And like that kind of like, okay, cool. And so that was the first gateway. And then it was like, walking through an aisle in Toys R Us in 1992 with my dad, and all of a sudden seeing this like the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. It was uh they covered a Spectacular Spider-Man 189. It was a collection, it was a holographic cover, and it was a collection of 30 issues of Spider-Man that were printed in recent years that showcased 30 years of Spider-Man. Who was, Spider-Man was celebrating his 30th. I'm like, Dad, get this for me now. And I just plowed through those comics. I would read them over and over and over again until they fell apart. And and that first issue of Spider-Man I read, it's just like it was just Harry Osborn had kidnapped his own family and forced Peter to sit down and have a dinner with him. And you got the gist of it. It's like, who's this Green Goblin guy? Okay, he seems like kind of a chump, but I guess his dad was all that. And that's what you kind of gather from reading those issues. And then, being at 1992, it's like, oh yeah, goblins aren't where it's at. It's symbiotes where it's at. It's like Venom and Carnage. They were the real deal villains at the time. And, that set off the comic book collecting craze for me. And of course, you start learning about Marvel. And of course, the X-Men cartoon gravitates you into that in 1992. And you get brought in to the Marvel universe via Spider-Man and X-Men. And of course, the cartoon makes you want those action figures bad, which makes you want those X-Men Series 1 cards and the X-Men Series 2 cards. And it was just like a golden age of X-Men collecting in those points in time. But my fandom really got shot off over the top in 1994, November 19th, 1994, with the premiere of the Spider-Man cartoon by my good friend John Semper. It was, which I still consider to this day, the greatest depiction of Spider-Man ever done, and the single greatest Spider-Man story ever told. And I that just put my Spider-Man fandom into overdrive. I just like had to beg my mom to take me to Toys R Us to get, the action figures, and I got Web Shooter Spider-Man and the Kingpin that day, which were I bought Kingpin because he was the biggest one. The concept of big action figures looked really cool to me. And that's it just it's cool that there's like a Wikipedia article dedicated to me on the Marvel Wiki saying it's like Matt Dunford, the world's biggest fan of the Spider-Man animated series and the world like universal source of it. So I think that's still really cool that I get that brought in. But and then 1994 also led to the Spider-Man trading card line, and I collected, but back to the story itself, you'll find it's like you ask me a question, I tell a story on top of another story on top of another story before finally answering the final question. But really happened is like it's like 1992, I get into like Spider-Man comics. 94, the Spider-Man toys come out. By 1995, I was finally seeing Star Wars. So it's like the, Kenner Star Wars line really appealed to me with that Power of the Force line. And then, I'm continuing reading comics and doing all this stuff until like, and there's this point where you can like look at my parents' storage unit where I've all these different like Lego Pirates, Spider-Man toys, X-Men toys, Star Wars toys, and then it just stops at 1999. And of course, what happened in 1999? All of a sudden, I'm not collecting comics and toys and stuff. Who came along? Who came along? This guy came along.
Oh no.
And like every other guy, and for those who can't see on camera, it was Pikachu. It was Pokemon made its debut in October 1998, and me, like every other kid in the entire world, was swept up into the Pokemon fandom. We all got into Pokemon cards came out in 1999. I started becoming a competitive Pokemon trading card player at that point, and I still am. Here I am 25 years later. I come and go with Pokemon cards, but it has a way of hooking me back in. So I'll get back into comics at a time. I'll get back into trading cards at a time. I'll have different fandoms that really resonate with things and appeal to me and my different geeky interests. I just wish I had more time for it now, but I'm an adult and I got a job now. But there are worse things in life for it.
Yeah, I did know you were a Spider-Man fan, so I wore my Spider-Man, one of my Spider-Man t-shirts for you today. So I
Okay.
thought that
Yeah,
would be a
that's
good way to go.
yes.
So I thought it's funny because you were building up to that, and I thought you were gonna say it was because the Spider-Man movie came out.
Now,
Because
I was into Spider-Man 10 years before the movie came out. I learned to read off of Spider-Man comics, and so
mhm.
that's pretty much where it is. But it was the Spider-Man cartoon that put it into overdrive. I'm happy that the world began to share a love that I have of Spider-Man with the movies when they came out in 2002. Geez, it's like 22 years now. It's like such a long time. But um, I've always been a Spidey fan, and I always just have been reading comics on and off for this sort of thing. So I was always diving through back issue bins for the older stuff, and there's points in time where, certain comic writers that really resonate with me on stuff. I mean, I was raised in the Spider-Man brain trust of the early 90s. So it was, Jam DeMatteis, Sal Buscema on Spectacular Spider-Man art, Mark Bagley. It was Ramita would actually would know he was born like 95 and they sort of thing. Like, it was DeFalco, Ron Frenz, those guys that, the four, Howard Mackey, those were the guys, cycling through the four Spider-Man books throughout the 90s. And I will admit, I was enticed by reading Spider-Man into the Clone Saga, and I love clones. I still love clones to this day, and it's really cool. A couple months ago, I went to or that was a month ago, I went to WonderCon, and with the special guest there was Terry Kavanagh, who was one of the group editors of the Spider-Man titles of the time. And I went up to him and I said, Mr. Kavanagh, I would like to talk to you about the Clone Saga. His face sinks, and I say, I love the Clone Saga, and then his face just lights up. He says, you know what? It's so nice to see that like kids who are like in their 30s and 40s now coming up to me and saying nice things about the Clone Saga because all they did was get hate mail for it back in the 90s for it. And it's just so cool to see that these guys are getting proper love and due and respect. But it's just like, oh, Spider-Man's not a real Spider-Man. It's a clone. You should know people. Superhero comics are always twists and turns, but they always reset themselves. I believe it was Julia Schwartz of DC Comics who said the trick to writing superhero comics is to create the element of change without anything ever changing.
that is such a good rule, and I really like that. I'm just like so old school, and I believe in putting the toys back in the sandbox the way you found them. Um,
Yeah, and that's always just how it's going to be. You just, you play up with toys for a while. Oh, Spider-Man's got this new costume. Oh, well, we got to get him in the old one. How are we going to get it? Well, what if the costume's a parasite? Cool. That's your shakeup right there. Cool. And you have fun with it.
so are you loving the new X-Men cartoon? You must be.
I am loving the new X-Men cartoon, although I won't talk spoilers because I've only seen the first three episodes. And
Okay, never, then I can't ask you a certain
yeah, yeah,
question.
yeah.
So,
I know that there's a certain person popping up, but it's like, I can't say like this. I did go to the world premiere of the X-Men cartoon, you know, back in March, and I was invited to it. I get invited to these red carpet premieres all the time, but it was like, it's just, I'm like, okay, fine, I will go to this one because I'm kind of inadvertently responsible for the show coming back. And the weird thing is, like, I didn't want to go back, but the whole story there is I actually had this idea for the 2017 San Diego Comic Fest, the convention that I helped organize. I said, that in 2017 we were doing the centennial of Jack Kirby as our focal point for the show. And I said, well, can we do a backup secondary theme? Can we do 25 years of the X-Men cartoon? And the head of the convention said, yeah, if you could pull the creators, we'd be happy to have them on board. And so I reach out to the creators. I reach out to Eric and Julia Leewald and Larry Houston, and they're like, are you sure you want us around? No one's ever invited us to it. I don't think anyone will remember. I'm like, I remember it. I love it. We should showcase it. And it was a hit. It was an absolute hit. The 25th anniversary stuff of X-Men was like covered on Forbes. It was covered on all these things. And all of a sudden, these, wonderful, writing talent of the Lee Walds and Larry Houston, who'd never really been doing the convention circuit or anything. All of a sudden, everybody wants them. Everyone wants them. It put X-Men like fandom back up into like above and beyond like, tiers. And it just kept spiraling, go more and more and more and more. And then finally the announcement that the show is coming back. And when I saw Julia Leewald at the premiere, I see the big marquee and she's like jumping up and down. She hugs me. She says, Matt, look, look, you did that. You did that. And the truth of the matter is I kind of didn't want the show to come back because I think we can't really, cater toward nostalgia for like what we had. Just let things be this. We're not 90s kids anymore. I'm like, I'm not an 8-year-old boy who's entertained by every Saturday morning cartoon you put under my nose. But I sat at the premiere and I'm like, all right, let's do this. And I watched the first episode. I'm like, that was a hit. Next one, slam dunk. I'm like, it went 3 for 3, being like perfect cartoons. And I was more entertained by the new version of the X-Men show than I was by the original one when I was a kid. And it's harder to do now because I have read the stories. I do have a standard of criteria. I do have these things. And it's like I'm harder to entertain now, but like I was vastly entertained. And I swear I will make the time to get caught up at some point. It's just a busy life for me, and it's just like so many other things going on. But I will make some time when I finally get a free moment to sit down and to watch it. But I've been very impressed by the X-Men cartoons so far, and I did pick up the new Nightcrawler '97 action figure. I think it's well done.
Oh, good. Well, I think that like for some like I kind it's weird because as you talk, certain things stand out to me, and it's like I feel like being a comic book fan very much is dependent on age. Like how you said that like you love the Clone Saga, and I think you were probably just the right age for it. Like uh like I was sort of getting away from comics when the first X-Men cartoon came out, just because I just graduated from high school and blah 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 blah, and so I kind of missed the boat on it. But for some reason, like when they announced this cartoon was coming back, I got really excited about it, and thank God, because it's really, really good. And I feel like the industry does well when the X-Men do well. So I'm very hopeful for like X-Men fever to be reignited again because of this, which will lead to probably a return of your favorite 90s cartoon. Seems inevitable,
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, which is also the whole thing there, which is like people have asked me, well, were you excited for Spider-Man 98, Spider-Man? And like, once again, despite it being my all-time favorite show, once again, I kind of didn't want it to come back because it once again was a product of its time. And if it is to be done, it needs to be done with John Semper at the helm, the original showrunner. And, he does have that story. And I've read that final script that he's done. I think it's a phenomenal story and a phenomenal wrap up. And after seeing what they've done with X-Men '97, it actually would give me faith that a Spider-Man cartoon, if it were done with that level of quality, would be perfectly surmised in, wrapping up that story that has been left hanging for ultimately for 26 years now.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I, like you, pretty much learned how to read from comic books. And you work with the artists now. But I was curious, as an artist, I feel like I'm always drawn to comics more for the art. Like, do you have like, are you more in it for the writing, do you think? Do the stories bring you back? Are there artists you particularly like and follow? Has your view on artists changed since you've been working with talent in your profession, or?
There's different perspectives of artwork. And I think, I think the best example of artwork in terms of tastes, when I was a kid, I hated John Romita Jr. as an artist. He was the ugly square guy, but as an adult, now he's like my favorite artist because I develop an appreciation for storytelling of what he brings into the fray. But back when reading Spider-Man comics as a kid, he was the ugly square guy. And now look, I look back and think about things. It's just like, some of my favorite comics overall are all done by Romita. My all-time favorite comic of all time, Peter Parker Spider-Man 75, which is the end of the Clone Saga. Before it was Spider-Man 74, but they wanted to show Peter was back. And so Peter Parker Spider-Man 75 is where they renamed it in 1996. And I it's just like, I do have an appreciation for storytelling, but in doing trading cards, it's not so much about the sequential story because you're looking at a single image. So you want the image to be refined and perfect and beautiful because those ones are going to have to stand the test of time. Whereas you're reading something, it's a little quicker in the storytelling. So you can be a little looser with that. So it doesn't need to be, the high eloquent, masterpiece of the form. But in terms of like modern comic people who I really like, I'll do anything that's I kind of go for the fun stuff now, now that I'm older. I'll pick up anything by Daniel Warren Johnson. That guy is so much fun. In fact, like I've never been into Transformers my entire life, and he became the guy on Transformers. I picked up my first Transformers comic, never bought a Transformers toy, never read a watched a Transformers cartoon. But that was a whole lot of fun. He really owned it with that, especially his other stuff like Ghost Fleet, Murder Falcon. My introduction to his stuff was Wonder Woman Dead Earth. That's like a 90s Wonder Woman story that should have been in the 90s, but it was a whole lot of crazy fun with it. Um, you can look back and do stuff. It's like, I gravitate towards Silver Age art like Ramita Senior and Steve Ditko or some of the go-to guys there. And he's like, "Are you into Kirby?" It's like I'm not so much into Jack Kirby. For me, it's like I think Kirby is a great world designer and a great character developer, but I think for me, there's like the art subject. It's like his work is like subject to an acquired taste. I think Kirby stuff is great when he's having dumb fun. Stuff like OMAC and Devil Dinosaur and Kamandi, those ones, the dumb fun books, or where Kirby is at his peak. Whereas like stuff like Fourth World, it's too high concept for me, and it gets kind of like buried in the mix. Artists who I've had the pleasure of knowing over the years. Had to meet Darwin Cook before he passed for a number of years. He was great. I got to know him for at cons coming and going for about 5 years. I mean, the man just could not draw a bad picture to save his life. You know, uh, uh, Ian Churchill is another artist who I absolutely admire. I've got a piece of Ian Churchill original art on every single wall in my house from his comic Marine Man. And
Love Marine Man.
you love Marine Man too. Marine Man is phenomenal. Okay, like Marine Man when it came out in December of 2010. I'm reading through my big stack of comics from Southern California Comics, who are wearing the shirt under this hoodie right now. But I was reading my stack of comics, just going through, going through, going through, and I get to Marine Man, and I read it, and then they did something I've never done before as a comic reader. I was so impressed by that book that I read it again.
Wow.
I've never been so moved by a book that I had to, just absolutely read it again because it was that much fun and that good. And then, fast forward, 6 months later, it's like summer 2011 at the San Diego Comic-Con. The day before, I had gotten my stack of books and I got Marine Man number 6. And I'm like, okay, I'm reading this. I'm reading this. I'm reading this. My friend's like, God, Matt, we got to get to comic. I'm not done with the latest issue of Marine Man yet. And as soon as I finish that book, I take it and I go from my place downtown right to the convention center, walk in, walk to the image booth, wait in line in front of Ian Churchill, and I say, "Hi, my name is Matt Dunford. I'm the world's biggest Marine Man fan. I just finished reading this. I'm arriving late to Comic-Con because I finished this. This is the most fun book on earth. And I'm declaring it right now. I'm the world's biggest Marine Man fan." And I see his art portfolio there. It's like, oh, there's the cover to number 1. There's the Atlantis double page spread. I'm like, man, I'm gonna own these one day. And you know what? I do.
That is amazing.
I own all the
It's
covers
very
and the
interesting.
Atlantis double page spread. I ponied up the big bucks to get those.
He very much changed his style for that book to like a more simpler cartoony as opposed to his hyper detailed style that he was doing like
I, 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 I- Incorrect. As discussions with him, he changed his style to work on X-Men. His style is that Marine Man style, and he was presented that when he was, approaching Marvel in the early 1990s. They're like, wow, they said, this is great, this is wonderful, this is awesome, but it's not going to sell.
right.
Unless you look like Jim Lee, it's not going to sell because, it's just the whole thing is like Marvel had lost, Jim Lee and Eric Larson and Todd McFarlane all to Image. So at that point in 1994, artists had to adhere the house style to a Jim Lee look. And that's, why you look at the Cooper brothers, they're Jim Lee clones at that time. You look at like, it's like everybody who was on an X-Men book who wasn't Joe Mad was drawing in a Jim Lee style. And so Ian has said, he had to learn to draw in a Jim Lee style, but you do see bits of it poke out. But when he finally was able to let that style flourish on Red Hulk, and that was just a lot of fun to do. It's like the Red Hulk stuff that he was doing was also a lot of fun. And so just seeing his style there just go through, but it's just like nothing like Marine Man. Marine Man is just such a fun book. And that book was nominated for Best New Series at the Eisner Awards after two issues. After two issues. I still
Wow.
think it was robbed, but it's just like it is
It's
just that damn good.
very underrated, very underrated. It is that good. So you are in San Diego because that's where Upperdeck is now, and it's obviously a great place to live if you're a comic book fan with San Diego Comic Con, the biggest comic book convention happening every year. I
Yeah.
used to go every year. I haven't been in several years, but I used to go every single year. Are you originally from San Diego?
Yes, I'm San Diego born and raised. I've been attending Comic-Con every year since 1994.
It feels like fate has rolled out the red carpet for your comic book fandom life and career.
Yeah, it's just, San Diego is very much a comic book town, and it's just, it is a great place to be, with everything that we've had over the years. It's like, we have a background with San Diego Comic Con, with Pacific Comics, with IDW Publishing, with Wildstorm, with Upper Deck. It's just, it just, it is, it's, and then, of course, new things now like the Comic Con Museum, and of also like, smaller conventions at San Diego Comic Fest, which who runs that one? Oh yeah, that I might know him. So it is a great town with great talent and so many different things being showcased. And, we have new publishers coming up right now, just like Chris Ryle, formerly of IDW Publishing, with his new image imprint Syzygy going up. Scott Dunbier, who you might know from IDW, who made the artist editions, is actually starting up a new company right now. So things are, kind of very much on the flourishing side of, getting up and at 'em. And just there's always so many different avenues for creators, for conventions, for fandoms, and we have wonderful stores here. I'm talking Southern California Comics, Now or Never Comics, Nuclear Comics, Comics and Stuff, Nowhere Games and Comics, the Comic Stronghold in Oceanside. It's just the Ninja Exchange. There's so much culture that we have here in this town concerning comics and collectibles.
Yeah, I know Chris Rael and Scott Dunbier from other amazing work. I actually interviewed Chris for my channel. I would love to interview Scott. I like the artist editions are one of the best things to ever happen to comic books in ever. And I, on one hand, I was very sad to hear he was leaving IDW. But on the other hand, I'm extremely excited for him and his new and his his publishing venture on his own. And hopefully, he hasn't really announced what that is going to look like yet. But I hope he takes, the runs with the artist editions and just does them on his own with his own company because they wouldn't exist without him, and nobody does them like him. So,
Yeah, it's yes. I mean, he not only pioneered the artist edition, but the absolute edition for DC Comics as well. And right now, like I finally, I moved into my new place about a month or two ago, and I finally got through this whole thing of, as of last night, I finally put away my last Marvel Omnibus edition, which was on a 5x5, Calyx shelf from IKEA. And I've also got one of the one for all my DC stuffs because I have a whole lot of absolutes there. But the downside is I go to IKEA, I can't find a shelf that can house the artist editions anymore. And those mofos are big, and I have 20 of them. I had to cut myself off at 20, but actually I changed that back 21 because Jim Lee recently did a signing at the Ninja Exchange here in San Diego. And I'm like, you know what? Finally, I'm going to bite on the 90s Jim Lee X-Men one because that one is just so beautiful. I got to get Jim Lee this.
before I forget, it is killing me that we're talking about 90s Spider-Man and Spider-Man in general and San Diego and conventions and Image Comics, and you have yet to mention Todd McFarlane. How do you feel about, were you not a fan of Todd McFarlane's
No, no,
Spider-Man
no.
or
I am a fan of Todd McFarlane's Spider. It's like I like the Michelini stuff, but it's just like I'm not so partial to the the Spider-Man book because I feel like, with that one, it's a lot of very cool art, but I don't really remember the stories. It's like
right?
cool, very demonstrative. It's like, it's the formative Spawn stuff. It's that in between stuff. You see the, monstrous take on like Hobgoblin and the Lizard and stuff, but it's just like I feel like that's not really showcased so because like I remember the imagery, but I don't remember the story. That's it. You kind of like go through. So it's a lot of visual stimulation, but not so much story stimulation that you remember. Because I remember the David Michelinie stuff so well. It's like, going all the way through up to like, assassination and stuff like that. That's like some crazy fun stuff. I loved reading through those. But it's, you can't deny, Todd McFarlane's contributions to Spider-Man that he did in the late 1980s and early 90s. So, it's just looking at like, what webbing was before, and then ultimately, Todd and the spaghetti webbing that, he has coined of sorts. And so it is really cool to see that. And actually, at Comic-Con last year, I was just out at the pool grabbing a drink with artist Des Taylor, who, I absolutely love Des's stuff, another one of
I
my
love his
favorite
stuff
creators
too.
to work with. And all of a sudden, just Todd McFarlane just walks right in front of us, and I raise my drink up. I'm like, "Hey, oh, Todd, father." He's like, "Hey, bud, how's it going, bud?" And he just like comes up and hangs with us for 45 minutes. And it's just like that dude's pretty chill. He's just like, yeah, he's coming. It's like I'm working on this right now. I got these toys coming out right now, but I got these toys. You gotta see this, but you gotta see this, but you gotta see this. But it's just like he was a chill dude.
That's funny. I do kind of like that aspect of the comic book industry is that it is kind of small, and even if someone as famous as Todd McFarlane, in the industry is accessible.
Yeah, and he says it's like, he always makes time for the fans. He says, I don't care how tired my hand is, I take the time to chat with the fans, I take the time to, chat with the artist because you do have to ultimately cultivate your fandom. And I think that is, a very good mentality to have because there's these artists that are like cooped up all day and all of a sudden they have this like, great these fans like so enthusiastic of me and they're like and I don't understand being that way to your fans. Be nice to them. You want to cultivate your fandom because you don't want to have a bad experience with creators. And I've certainly had lesser than ideal experience with creators. And I won't name them by name, but it's just, it kind of has soured me on their work. And so I'm like, I'm not supporting it as I once did. And so like that's just, personal thing. Everyone's got their issues, they've got their gripes and stuff like that. But it's like I think you should always just be nice to the fandom. And so I mean that's why I guess I'm a good talent relations guy because I'm always nice to everyone.
Well, that's a perfect segue for me because, like Chris Rael and like Scott Dunbar, I don't know them very well on a personal level, but, I'm very familiar with them and they seem very much the type of people that everyone knows and everyone really likes. And they do a lot of positive things in comics, like a really great positive force in comics. And that's how you seem to me. Like, I always feel like you're getting a lot of positive praise and attention. People really seem to like you. And that was before your, newfound fame.
Yeah, that was
Um,
that was before I was the newfound Netflix heartthrob of like, internet fame. It's like so
so of course I have to ask about that. So how did okay, so just so everyone knows what we're talking about, you were featured on an episode of Love on the Spectrum. It was the first episode of season two. And believe it or not, I had never seen the show until last night. I watched it. So I thought it might help me familiarize you with a little more before we chatted. And I have to say, like, not knowing you personally or anything, you were so endearing and so charming. And I can see why, like, the audience probably fell in love with you and how you could, if you haven't already, I don't know if you can say anything or not, but they definitely will be having you back for another season, if not like your own spinoff or something. How on earth did you come to be part of this show?
okay, yeah. So how did I get to be on an episode of the, Emmy award-winning Love on the Spectrum? Okay, so it stems back from like uh it was uh, the whole thing kind of came into be last year when I started helping out with a local group around San Diego called Autism Tree, and they thought that I was really helpful and really nice with what I had given insight, as on as a spectrum adult, and they wanted me to be a keynote speaker that year, and because it was what was it, October 2002, November 2002 at the time, a keynote speaker at the UC San Diego Global Neuroscience Conference. And so I did a panel called Living Autistically, where I, worked with some of these with these, autistic kids who are nonverbal. They can't speak, but they're absolute geniuses. They mainly use computers to type that there because it's just like they, don't speak for whatever reason, but I think they're really geniuses. And these are just teenagers. So we all talked about our own experiences on this panel, and I gave to mine. And as I'm, talking about like, it's like cool. I exist. It's like, I'm like, I work at Upperdeck. I'm chairman of San Diego Comicfest. I hosted Club Cosplay, and they're like, it's like these. I, was a writer for World War Wings, doing, World War II history and all this stuff. And as I'm going up, I guess unbeknownst to me, the producers of Love on the Spectrum had been been given a presentation earlier in the day, and I guess they were in the audience, and they were just like, him, him. We got to get him for the show. And after that, they kind of like started hounding me, and so I was like, wait. You want me to be on your reality TV show? Because I've always just viewed reality TV as like a dead end. It's just never been my thing. Because it's like, oh, cool, you get a quick high and then, up, a low. It's like the American Idol effect. But eventually, I gave in and they said, oh, we know this girl who would be great on a date with you. She's really into cartoons. She's really into cartoons. So it's like, okay, they really wanted comic book boy to go out with cartoon girl. So I did that and I'm like, all right, let's just do it. So I do half a day of work, drive up to Venice Beach. I get situated and I'm like, all right, let's do this. And so like, hi, nice to meet you. Hi, nice to meet you. And it's like the thing I didn't know because I'd done absolutely no research into the show at all. I thought I was going to be the focal point. I didn't realize it was Spectrum on Spectrum.
Oh, okay.
I did not know that I was going to be paired with a Spectrum girl. I thought it was just going to be a neurotypical girl and that'd be like, but we chat, we talk and do this stuff. We mainly, sat there for like 2 hours talking cartoons and, other junk like that and just like, just seeing do we click. But, ultimately we didn't click. And so that's just them's the breaks. And so I'm like, okay, well, that was kind of, iffy and cringe. And so then a year later, the show comes out. And, I'm here in the office. I'm like, doing my emails and stuff like that for the day. Like artists who I work with in France are like, Matt, did I just see you on Netflix? Yes. And then more and more artists that I work with on that day, it started with a handle. It's like, Matt, you're on Netflix. And it's like, yes. And then I'm being tagged in Instagram reels. I'm being tagged like what was a handful of people became a couple dozen, became hundreds. And all of a sudden I'm like going viral on TikTok. And it's like, I can't. And by the end of the day, even my parents had heard about it because I was silent about this, not because of NDA reasons. I just didn't talk about it at all. And it became this worldwide sensation. And all of a sudden I'm like the newest heartthrob on the internet and people are like, this like massive horde of people start following me on Instagram and I'm on Forbes, I'm on the Washington Post, I'm on this like everyone wanting to talk to me over this and it's like it was a wild ride, but you have to take it as the 15 minutes of fame. And then actually this past Saturday, I went to the Comic-Con Museum for the San Diego Autism Society. They actually had me and Danny reunite on a panel at this, and we just talk about life after Love on the Spectrum. I'm saying it's like okay, yeah, it's no shortage of ladies trying to slide into my DMs or that sort of thing. But I think it's been wonderful just to talk to people about sharing their passions and helping out with this thing because there's parents who are like my child's on the spectrum. What do I do? Is he into Pokemon? Yeah, buy him Pokemon cards. Oh, I'm an adult, and I've been in the spectrum all my life. I've never come out of the closet for this sort of thing. What do I do? Buy Pokemon cards. Pokemon and Minecraft are going to be your best friends, and comic books is for this stuff. But it's just a great thing. And then I had this wonderful, adoring public that wanted to come up to me, and I'm going up and saying, "It's like, what are your passions, Matt?" Oh, my passion is comics. So I'm going up to the wall. This is a John Buscema stuff. You can tell by like the cross hatching around the abs on Namor right here, or it's like this is a Kirby page right here, and this is a Ditko page. You always tell Ditko I got the hands, and so I'm like having this audience like just hang on my every word as I'm talking about the difference in comic art and stuff. They're like, wow, you are really passionate about this stuff. I'm like, yeah, how could you not be? This is a Ditko original page right in front of me.
Well, I think that one of the fears probably of participating in reality television, of course, is how you're going to be portrayed or edited or whatever. And you must have been happy though, because I think that they did right by you, and you came off as, like I said, it's very charming and very much like it was kind of interesting to me because she just seemed hell bent on the fact that you weren't an animator. So I just think that that was like it was not going to go anywhere because of that. And but and I was also curious, like how much beer did you drink? Because she seemed very concerned with
What?
having be able to afford like
It was
whatever
two, but
she
it's like,
said.
but once again, that's just a product of the editorial. It's like, oh, because she's a
Yeah,
beer
yeah.
drink. Well, it's like I had two, and they were 4%ers. They were Mexican lagers, man.
I
And
thought
yeah,
it
yeah,
was
it's
just
like
kind
I
of
know the whole financial burden thing, because like whenever I go into a brewery now, it's like, hey, Mr. Financial Burden. I'm like, hey, what's up, guys? Yeah. And, no,
I
no,
thought
but
it was
but
funny.
I hung out with Danny, and I got to meet her aunt and uncle. They were really nice, and that was a whole thing. And her new boyfriend Adon, it's like it's like we all hung out on last Saturday night, and it was weird because like I brought them into my neighborhood and all of them to hang out and just like to do these things. I'm like, this is my store. This is where like when it's open during the day. There's Nuclear Comics where I go shopping on Sundays. There's the thing, and they wanted to go at the karaoke. We tried to go to a karaoke spot. All of a sudden, it's like the horde of people outside the karaoke is like, oh my God, it's a Spectrum people. And like, we just like, okay, we can't go here because like we're just getting fanboyed and mobbed too much by the crowds for it. But it's been a fun time. And, I have no ill will toward Danny, and I don't like people saying negative things about her. It was like, it, it's like, no, it's just like she has her, interests. We didn't click, just move on. I don't, people saying it's like, you were so mean to Matt. It's like, well, I mean, we all can't have Matt Dunford. Well, maybe you can, but it's just accept things as they are and don't be like negative if things don't work out. Just move on. It's literally 10 minutes on a reality TV show.
Yeah, I don't think there was any real reason to like feel a certain way about her. Like I just felt like it just kind of didn't work out. I thought it was kind of interesting because I guess I, like most people, don't, have a huge knowledge of the spectrum and things like that. But because I do have friends with children, but like, you had referenced before, like they're not even communicative. So there are obviously different, levels of the spectrum. And it seemed like they I felt like they portrayed it in a way that it was interesting for me to hear you say that you didn't know she was going to be on the spectrum because they made it seem like people on the spectrum exclusively date people on the spectrum, or that's the only way it could really work. And I would think that that's not true at all. You know what I mean? It's like I would you don't necessarily have to date people on the spectrum. Do you think it matters at all to you?
No, you can, just date what you're into, but people go on dates with me and be like, "Oh wow, he's really cringe. He doesn't stop talking about comics and Pokemon. I think I'm out of here."
But it's funny because that thought occurred to me as well. Is because whether you're on the spectrum or not, if you're a comic book geek, you're going to talk about your fandom like ad nauseum, no matter what. So, um, you know, uh, I think it is better to meet somebody who can at least tolerate somebody's whatever hobby, because the comic book fandom geekdom is definitely very consuming, as I well know from my own personal experience.
As it is always consuming. I mean, have you ever met a collector satisfied with their with their collection?
No.
Nope, not gonna happen. You keep going and going and going and going. It's like, and it's that whole thing when I just moved to my new place and I realized I have less space here. Am I a hoarder? No, I'm a comic fan. No, I'm fine. That's how you just.
Amen. Amen to that. So has it led to other offers? Have people reached out to you? Will we be seeing you on Celebrity Big Brother? Or I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah. No, no. I think I'm fine just doing like the whole. Like, I mean, I've got a decent life. If something comes up from it, whatever. Like, I mean, anyone who knows me knows I'm a complete attention whore, and I never turn down every or anything because that's why it's often been said that if you're doing an event and if Matt Dunford isn't there, it's not worth going to because I literally will show up to everything. And I wish I did have more time to just sit and read comics, but it's just like, life has gotten a lot busier for me as of late. That, I mean, it's always been busy, but I'm just happy to do what I can. And with everything going on, I mean, I'm just happy to settle into things. I'm happy to work my job and happy to work with so many, talented artists and creators all the time. And it's been a fun ride. Considering, 10 years ago, I was working as a chauffeur, and now I'm getting to, make trading cards and work with artists that I love. I think it's kind of a good evolution of sorts.
Yes, that is indeed. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Is there any projects you're working on now, or any plans for this summer that you're gearing up for that you would like to talk to us about before we wrap up here?
Um, well, I'm always looking towards my 30th year at San Diego Comic Con, and you might hear something new about San Diego Comic Fest, that little convention I put together. Who knows? So, yeah, it's like, we had to put things on hold for last year due to some, outside circumstances. But stay tuned for 2024. You'll see.
One thing I did want to tell you before I go, I had done like this Kickstarter project, like a big comic book anthology for Big Bang Comics. It's like
Oh, nice.
80s, 80s, 90s. This is a Jim Rugg cover, actually.
Oh,
Uh,
yes, I love Rugg.
yeah, he's amazing. So it was Kickstarter. It was successful. I'm very proud of it. Lots of great artists and stuff. But I don't know if you can tell from this cover, but they're designed to be like baseball cards.
Yes.
So they're laid out like that. And as part of the package or whatever, one of the incentives is we turned all of his art into a package of trading cards,
Oh, you made your own trading cards? That's awesome.
and they've turned out amazing. And after we talk, I'd love to get your address and be able to just send them to you as the trading card guy, just so
Oh,
you
sure. I
can
would, I would, I would love to check them out.
have them and see them fun. But it was just curious because that was one of the questions I had when we did it. It was great because it was like Silver Age nostalgia, trading cards and stuff like that. But I wasn't sure what level of interest people had in trading cards. But I'm so glad we did them. They turned out great, and people were like really excited about them. So I'm glad to talk to you and know that trading cards are alive and well and doing good.
Hey, so everything is someone's gateway drug. And like I said, if it can be that overlap, if it's like, you might get in via action figures, you might get in via trading cards, you might get in via comics, maybe it's a cartoons, but whatever, crosses the streams will lead you into, getting into more and more and more.
Okay, and this is actually my final question. One thing
Okay, sure.
what have you ever had an interest in making your own comic book as someone who has, such access to, like, if there's anyone who wanted to make their own comic and would be able to do it, it seems like it would be you. I'm just wondering
Yeah.
if you ever had those aspirations.
I have done my own comics in the past. They've been a lot of like, goofy stuff or self-bio or like or semi-autobiographical autobiographical stories. It's and the thing is like, it's kind of falling off sometimes. It's like, they'll be done with, creators that, oh, I gotta go do this now, or certain I'll have like creative differences with people, and then things will not work out. But I've always wanted to do my own stuff there. It's like I've always had the ideas in the back of my mind. They're kind of plotted, they're kind of done. It's like I know I want to work with this individual person, but I'm just like, oh, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. It's like, and that's the thing, life kind of gets in the way between your own personal projects and stuff. But I definitely do have those ideas, and I would love to do it one day.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. I can see a lot of hustle and bustle in your office behind you, and it
uh
was so you're just as nice and charming and amazing as I expected you to be. And I'm so happy that we were able to finally do this. So thank you so much for taking your time to chat with us and be here with me today, Matt. I really appreciate it.
and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me too.
All right, you guys. So anyway, thanks for watching. And look for Upperdeck cards if you're at San Diego Comic Con or Comic Fest, and you see Matt Dunford. Don't hesitate to go up and say hi and tell him how much you love the Clone Saga.
Yes.
All right, Matt. Thanks so much, and I will let you go. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, Michael.
All right. Take care. Bye now.